Radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Evening yet again. I was hoping and praying that it didn't rain and somebody somewhere has been listening to me because it is glorious. Make sure you join us, by the way, every night because I'm going to be here.
You with GB News. In a moment, Michelle Dewberry is live from just outside Buckingham Palace. First, let's bring you up to date with the latest news headlines. And the top story this hour, Donald Trump has told GB News he believes Meghan Markle treated the late Queen with disrespect. In an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage, the former US president gave his take on the King's coronation and his role as monarch.
I think it's going to be a great day, and I think that they will do a great job.
Yeah.
And he loves the country. Really, I got to know him quite well, and he loves the country, really loves the country, and he loved his mother. And that's why I thought she was treated so disrespectfully by Meghan, and just no reason to do that. I was actually surprised that Harry was invited, to be honest.
Well, you can see that full world-exclusive interview with Donald Trump tonight on Farage at 7 p.m. Meanwhile, 29,000 police officers are being deployed to bolster security around the King's coronation. The Metropolitan Police has confirmed the scale of the operation is bigger than that of the Queen's funeral. The force also revealed more details about yesterday's arrest at Buckingham Palace last night. A man was detained after shotgun cartridges were thrown over the gates, and there was a controlled explosion after the suspect asked to speak to a soldier before telling officers his backpack needed to be handled correctly. The Met's Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Ade Adelekan, says the incident was handled swiftly.
We got that incident under control extremely quickly. So the male was detained within seconds. He was arrested within five minutes, so under control extremely quickly. We have debriefed this, and we're absolutely confident in our plans. And let me just reassure London that we are tried and tested at this. We're not doing this alone. We've reviewed our plans, and I'm absolutely confident that we will deliver this in a manner that will be safe and secure for everyone that actually comes to London.
International news, and Ukraine denies it was behind a drone attack on the Kremlin last night. A video appears to show President Putin's residence being hit late last night. Russia says it was an assassination attempt, but the attack was thwarted with electronic defences disabling the aircraft. President Zelensky says Ukraine had nothing to do with it.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow. We fight on our territory. We are defending our villages and cities. We don't have, enough weapon for this. That's why we don't use it anywhere. For us, that is the deficit. We can't spend it. And we didn't attack Putin. We leave it to tribunal.
Volodymyr Zelensky speaking earlier. Well, here at home, the Prime Minister says he's aware tomorrow's local elections in England will be tough for the Conservative Party. At PMQs earlier on today, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer clashed over higher mortgages and a shortage of homes in their final exchange before voting begins tomorrow. And on the last day of campaigning, Rishi Sunak said he's focused on delivering on the people's priorities, both locally and nationally.
We've always said these are going to be a tough set of elections for us. We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities to a local level. That's about lower council tax, where Conservative areas have council tax that's on average £80 lower than Labour ones. Crime is lower, and we fill more potholes. Nationally, I'm focused on my 5 priorities. That's halving inflation, growing the economy, reducing debt, cutting waiting lists, and stopping the votes. We're going to keep delivering for people. My priorities are the people's priorities.
Well, for his part, Sir Keir Starmer says he accepts Labour has to make progress tomorrow.
I took over the Labour Party when we just lost very badly in 2019 with a mission to get us into government in 2024. We make progress year after year, and I hope we can make progress in these elections. I have to say the baseline for the government is very, very low because they had terrible results 4 years ago, which is the cycle of these elections. That was their second worst election result in their history, and Theresa May had to personally apologise to their candidates afterwards. So they should be making significant gains tomorrow to show they're not going backwards.
Well, full updates and, of course, results on those local elections here on GB News tomorrow. The England and Wales Cricket Board is recommending fines totalling £37,000 for those involved in the Yorkshire racism scandal. Former cricket international Gary Ballance was hit the hardest with a fine of £8,000 and a suspension for 8 weeks. Ballance is one of 6 who's accused of using racist language from allegations made by former Yorkshire bowler Azim Rafiq. The ECB took into account the fact that Ballance had admitted the charge and apologised. More than 7 million households will receive a £301 cost of living payment by the end of today. The money's part of a package of government support to help struggling households. A further £300 will be made available to eligible families by the autumn, and a similar payment will then be made in spring next year. And lastly, ahead of the King's coronation, 3 dresses owned by Diana, Princess of Wales, will go on display at the Museum of Style Icons in Ireland before being auctioned off. The outfits will go under the hammer at Los Angeles in August. They're expected to sell for between £280,000 and £550,000. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel. Now back to Buckingham Palace, and waiting for us there, Michelle Dewberry.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. We are live again from our GB News studio outside Buckingham Palace. Coming up tonight, you all know by now, don't you, the goings on when it comes to security concerns last night. It's got many people talking about what should security look like at the event surrounding the coronation. Of course, the Public Order Act, that's come into play today. Many people criticising that, saying it is basically the police and all the rest of it taking steps too far. What do you make to all of that? And I want to talk supermarkets to you tonight. There is so much to get into. We know by now, don't we, food prices are off the scale. There's been calls for them to be investigated. Are they overly inflating their prices in order to profit? What is going on in terms of some of these barriers that supermarkets are erecting to try and make you put your receipt through, to try and stop shoplifting? And what is this? Have you seen these massive loyalty card discounts that are going on? Do you agree with that or not? And I want to talk climate change to you tonight. We all talk about it, don't we? But are we guilty of being quite hypocritical when it comes to actually having our lives affected by it? And last but not least, scamming. Have you been a victim of it? How do we stop digital fraud? Joining me tonight, right through till 7 o'clock tonight, Kevin Craig is a former Labour councillor and the CEO of communications company PLMR. And alongside him, Connor Tomlinson is a writer and podcast host. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Lovely to have you. I'm very happy indeed that the weather is holding out. We've got the sun. Hopefully it will remain the rest of the evening. You know the drill, don't you, on Dewbs Co. It is not just about us three. It is very much about you guys at home. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch all the usual ways. GBViews at gbnews.uk is how you can get hold of me. Twitter, if that's your thing. You can reach me there at Michelle Dewbs or at GB News. If you're hearing, by the way, lots of beeping and whistling and all the rest of it because you're listening, not watching, you're wondering what's going on, it's all the traffic control. So you might hear and you might see, actually, they're stopping the traffic. You're seeing the entourages of various different cars passing. I always find it quite fascinating when someone quite important passes with a whole kind of flurry of cars surrounding them. They do seem to me to not look like very environmentally friendly cars. You will spot quite a few large 4x4s. I'll get into the climate stuff later on in the show. But for now, let me ask you this. How strict do you think security should be around the coronation? It was all going on last night, wasn't it? It's actually just after I came off air. It's been quite well documented now. Some guy just behind us, actually, apparently was throwing some kind of shells into the palace, and then Jacob Rees-Mogg, he was carrying on broadcasting, and you might have heard that. There was a very loud, controlled explosion. Lots of people are talking then about security today because you might be aware that the Public Order Act, that has come into play today. You've had a situation where anti-monarchy campaigners, they've been getting letters pointing out these new powers to them. Some lawyers are calling that intimidation. Kevin, I'll pick up with you on this. What do you make to the whole security? Do you feel safe sitting here?
I do. I mean, the security, my office is also in Westminster, Michelle, and
right.
the operation in the last few weeks has really escalated, and I feel really reassured by it. And let's not forget, this coronation is the biggest opportunity for protester groups to make their point and get a global audience, and I think there's a healthy balance being struck. Actually, I've got no problems with these letters reminding people of the legal framework, and I hope that it all goes off really smoothly, and I'm fully behind what the police and the authorities are trying to do.
But what about the Public Order Act, though? It's come under scrutiny, hasn't it? It's got various different expansions of power, so we'll see things like much broader stop and search, so non-suspicion stop and search, that'll be going on. You're seeing things like locking on, so-called, that will be criminalised now, lots of other things. Do you support those measures or not?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think we have to remember in our country that the police and the government of the day, whether it's Tory or Labour-led, they're not doing these things for fun, and it's thankless, because if they get this wrong, okay, we'll never hear the end of it. Okay, this is the highest profile operation, public event in, well, literally 70 years, and I'm really happy. And if you live and work around here, it's been the police are friendly, the staff, they seem to know what they're doing. So far, so good.
So Kevin Craig is happy man tonight. Connor, your thoughts?
Public order bill, considering the loud and noisy protest clause, I was very suspicious when it was first being drafted and has eventually passed. My issue is not necessarily with the fact that they're going to crack down quite hard on Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion, who have refused to rule out the possibility of trying to disrupt the coronation itself. My issue is after that? Who are the kind of protests that they're going to unilaterally crack down on? Because we saw under lockdown and then shortly after, the anti-lockdown protesters were treated with truncheons, whereas the Extinction Rebellion types have still been allowed to sit in the road. And so for this coronation, I wouldn't be shocked if we see the highest levels of police presence possible, and I definitely support that. But afterwards, tepid.
What do you think about some of the groups saying that they will be protesting against the monarchy during the coronation? I personally do not think it's the time or the place. I accept that they can have a right to do that, but I wish that they wouldn't. I wish that they'd just go away. I was going to say it a little bit less kind then, but I wish that they would go away and make their point after everyone else has celebrated their event. Do you think they should be able to protest?
Able, yes. Should they? No. This is very much like when, at the Queen's funeral, when it passed through Scotland, one bloke decided to shout and the rest of the crowd hauled him off, and nobody was really complaining that fella's freedom of speech was violated because it wasn't the time or the place. It's also... It kind of annoyed me when Tom Tugendhat sent out these letters saying, just to remind you, you can, but you shouldn't. Because when he went on and did a BBC radio interview, he said, oh, the fact that we're letting these protests go ahead shows us that the highest values of democracy and tolerance in Britain are being showed. Not really our highest values, because if it was democracy as a highest value, we wouldn't have a king in the first place, so I don't particularly like the framing. I just don't like the idea that we're supposedly letting these people exist just for the sake of looking tolerant, rather than saying, no, we should be asserting our culture, and actually not the time and place.
What do you think, to Connor's point, which I actually think is a good one, in terms of potential overreach and all the rest of it, after this buzzy coronation has gone?
Yeah.
What then?
I think it's a non-point. I don't know what the reference is to lockdown protesters getting beaten up with batons and truncheons while Extinction Rebellion were allowed to do what they got to do. And also...
What do you mean what they've got to do?
Well, let's go back to your point.
Well, don't evade there. Come on. What do you mean?
Let me finish.
All right,
let me finish, right? So you said... Well, I'm a bit worried afterwards because, you know, we've seen that the Extinction Rebellion protesters were treated with kid gloves whilst the lockdown protesters were beaten up with batons. I'm asking you, what are you referring to and what are you talking about?
Oh, actually, so when they went in and broke up the protest, there was, I remember specifically, there was a Muslim police officer that was disciplined because she said some rather racist things on her social media, but she went in and actually hit people because they were gathered up. In terms of the Extinction Rebellion protesters and that treated with kid gloves, when Insulate Britain have been allowed to sit in the road before, and Just Up Oil, and all these groups that are all connected, they did cause a car pile-up and someone was killed in the collision. So I'm saying one is clearly very dangerous, but the police are more than willing to say, oh, are you comfortable and do you want a blanket?
Are you suggesting then on public telly that the police are biased in favour and treating more sympathetically Extinction Rebellion protesters vis-a-vis anti-lockdown protesters?
Yes, having seen the video footage.
All right.
Do you think there's any, do you have any sympathy with that perspective, if it's not from a police side of things and perhaps from a media side of things? Because you do see it. I remember, I think it was Extinction Rebellion, but it was certainly a climate group in and around Oxford Circus. Those guys pretty much closed it down, was erecting, was it like a massive boat or whatever it was, these huge structures, and they were having like the party of their lives. They had all of these bands and drums and dancing around, and whereas when people went out to protest things like vaccine mandates and all the rest of it, the way that those two groups do get regarded and respected and treated is quite different.
No, I mean, I can't find the words to disagree with that more profoundly.
What do you disagree with?
Well, I disagree with your suggestion, both of you, that the police are some way, or the government today in some way, treats more favourably Extinction Rebellion protesters. Because over time now, the police have got quite hardball about it. And if I can just finish, you know, it's got a lot more strain over time. Because I totally disagree.
But I broadened it out from just the police, and I said, if you don't agree with the police, do you think that, for example, the media perhaps treats those two groups differently?
No, because I mean, sometimes on this channel, it's a bit like supporting Millwall is the vibes you all give off, that nobody likes us, we don't care, and that, you know, everyone else is unfairly predisposed to supporting Extinction Rebellion. There was a lot of coverage across mainstream media, rightfully, saying how dare these Extinction Rebellion guys disrupt ambulances and get in the way of normal working class people trying to earn a living.
Right, well, a few things I want to come back to that. So firstly, there's not a common voice on the channel. There's all different perspectives. So you're sitting here with a very different perspective from perhaps from Connor, from perhaps me. So I don't feel like we've got this united hated, we're Millwall, no one likes us, we don't care. I don't share that sentiment at all.
That's all right.
And I'll leave it to you guys at home. You can be the third voice, the third panel voice in this conversation. Do you think there's any truth in what you're hearing when you see some of the climate protesters and all the rest of it? They do seem basically to be able to pretty much do what they want, be able to cause maximum disruption. But when you do see, for example, or you did see some of the protests around things like, COVID vaccine mandates and things like that, I certainly feel, Connor would say as well, that there is a little bit of a difference between the way it's reported, perhaps even policed. What do you think to that? Do you think that's fair? The anti-monarchy protesters, do you think that actually that is the time and the place? You've got this coronation, all eyes are on it. Do you think that's a fair time and place to get involved?
No, and also because, polling clearly shows a majority of Brits are in favour of the monarchy currently. And there is democracy, because if there was a vote in our Houses of Parliament, the monarchy could be abolished, right? So it is democratic, to go back on an earlier point. It is currently the settled will of the people. And no, it's not. A lot of people are looking forward to this ceremony. A lot of the older generation, they fought and risked their lives for Queen and country and King and country, Charles's granddad. So it's not the time or the place. Make your points, but don't. It's selfish and it's not fair to disrupt. You've seen it all week. There's a lot of happy people looking forward to this, and I don't think it's right they should spoil it.
Are you looking forward to it at home? Are you actually doing anything? Because one of the things that struck me recently over the last kind of few days, I've seen quite a few different official events that have been set up that have been cancelled due to lack of public interest, or they've not been able to sell enough tickets or whatever. So it's all well and good sitting here in London where there is this vibe. I'll be spending Coronation Saturday actually in Hull, and I don't really think I will be doing much. So I wonder, is there much of a disconnect between how much you get into things here versus out and about in the rest of the country?
My family are doing bits and pieces. To come back and connect that actually to a point you made about democracy, the thing I would worry about is, okay, even if the vote passed now, where we've got the generation that fought for and revere Britain, about 4 in 10 of my generation don't think the monarchy's worth anything, and so they're more than happy to tear asunder all of the traditions that plenty of generations came before. So you kick that down the road a few years and they might make the wrong choice and disrespect the institution, which, no matter how your misgivings about the current king are, this is a long tapestry of history that connects us to the past and we should be grateful for. So I don't like the idea of just framing it as the monarchy is in keeping with democracy, because if people make the wrong choice and got rid of the king, then we'd lose a hell of a lot.
Is that fair?
Well, it's literally fair, but the great thing is about Britain is that we are a democracy, and so, especially in modern times, every generation has got a right to form its own opinions. One of the things I think, and by the way, I think you're absolutely right, Michelle, there's different levels of enthusiasm around the country.
Right there then on that sentence.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Around the country, there's not universal excitement about this, and you're right to have a look at what's going on around the country. But what's interesting about Charles is, as king, he knows that he reigns by consent. And so Connor's actually right, that there is a lot of influencing and winning of hearts and minds to be done with Connor's generation, I think.
I would not want to be a member of the royal family, though, for love nor money. There's so much criticism levelled at them about the privilege and the wealth and all the rest of it. And yes, you know what? Yes, they might have some privilege, and yes, they might have some wealth and all the rest of it, but no privacy whatsoever. You are literally bred into a life of service, and it would just not be for me. I would want to be able to switch off when I felt like it, switch on when I didn't feel like it. It's not for me. Mick says, nobody in the north gives a bleep. I shall use the word bleep, Mick, because it is tea time. But Mick says, no one in the north gives a bleep about all of this bleep at the weekend. Can you get in the real world? We do not care.
There you go.
Well, are you in the north? Do you care? What do you think to what Mick has to say? Someone else says, if you live in a democracy, you have to take the rough with the smooth. Lots of divided opinions on this. Are you a supporter of the monarchy? And if you're questioning, by the way, why we're here in the run-up to the coronation, I've got to say, reading the news, discussing the news as we do, there is so much depressive, negative news, actually, and I personally am absolutely loving the atmosphere in and around Buckingham Palace at the moment, because it is jovial, positive and upbeat, and anything actually we can do to create those feelings among us, I celebrate.
Well said.
I will take a quick break right now. When I come back, I will have a lot more of your feedback on that last topic, but I also want to talk supermarkets to you, so I do. So much to get into. The inflation, prices of the food, is that justified, or is it all a little bit of greed? Should they they be investigated? What do you think about the barriers stopping people getting out without receipts? And also, have you noticed the whole kind of loyalty card thing, the massive discounts that are on offer at the moment? Do you agree with that or not? See you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Radio.
Coming up tonight from 7, a world exclusive. Join Nigel live from Trump's golf course in Scotland.
It's great.
It's
Nice to see
fantastic.
you.
Everything about it's beautiful.
It's great to have you here.
The last time you were on GB News was the day that the Queen died.
That's right.
And you came
That's
on.
right.
You came on and paid a tribute to her.
What a great woman.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Farage, the Trump interview, tonight at 7. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and the CEO of communications company PLMR. Alongside him too, Connor Tomlinson is a writer and podcaster. Della says, what's the matter with Kevin? Michelle, he's agreed with you twice tonight. I think you might have missed a few minutes of my show, Della, because about 5 minutes ago you were saying that GB News, we're like Millwall, no one likes us and we don't care. What do you make to that? Mick on Twitter, you've upset the Northerners, Mick, because he was saying earlier on, he tweeted in and said that the Northerners don't give a bleep about the coronation. The Northerners are writing in, they're not having any of it. Jessica says on Twitter, I live in the North and I'm enjoying everything to do with the coronation. In fact, I don't know anyone who is not looking forward to the weekend. Silly man. man. That's you she's talking about there, Mick. Who's this one? You don't put your name on it, but on Twitter you say you're in the north. You're going to London tomorrow to be on the Mall, and you sent me a picture of your house. You, sir, are not messing around. He's got a big flagpole there with his flag. He's got all of his bunting tied to his front wall. I like it. Samantha says, I'm from the north, East Yorkshire. Great place. I'm looking forward to watching the coronation with my mother-in-law on Saturday. We've got a big family barbecue, she says. So many people from the north are not having any of that, what Mick was saying, you're saying. Tony says, Mick in the north is plain ignorant. Plenty of people in North East are looking forward to the weekend because unlike Mick, he says, they realise how lucky they are to have the king. Will you all be pledging your allegiance to the king? Will you be sitting at home reading out the words?
Well, I would do if my job or elected office needed it. I might not necessarily at the moment, but I've got no problem with it in principle.
Will you be sitting at home pledging your allegiance to the king?
I'll do it to the institution. I have my reservations about Charles and who he politically cozies up to, but
sure. No way.
Why? Well,
why? I'm not a big fan of the World Economic Forum and UN, so.
Well,
seems to be buddies. Not. I think he can hopefully turn it around while he's there, but still holding that for William a little bit.
Well, I think I'm a little bit outnumbered on here then, because I've got to confess I won't be sitting at home repeating a mantra to my telly. Will you at home? You're nodding. You just said you wouldn't be doing it.
No, I said I've got no problem. I might not on the day. It feels a little bit funny like doing it at home, you know. I commit, but I've got in principle committing to the institution, you know, and I'm more worried, Michelle, by the fact that it's a bad thing that our king would support the United Nations, as Connor says. A force for good in the world.
Are you not familiar with the UN AIDS principles that just come out? 21 AIDS principles in March that says that it should be capable for children to consent to sex and use drugs. So I don't think they're a force for good in the world. They're doing some very questionable things at the moment.
Well, there you go. You've just suggested a debate for another day, so
yes.
I will make a note to self and we can get into that perhaps another day. But for tonight, I want to talk to you about an issue that I think will affect you all, and that is supermarkets. What on earth is going on? There's been calls for them to be investigated, basically, about food inflation. This comes from the leader of the Lib Dems, Ed Davey. He wants the Competition and Markets Authority to be looking into them. Also, as well, I can't help but notice there is so much division at the moment between the cost on the shelf and then the cost if you've got a loyalty card. Those discounts really are quite deep at the moment. And also, another thing that's caught my eye when it comes to supermarkets are the barriers. In so many places now, you can't get out unless you're scanning your receipts, apparently, to try and get on top of shoplifting. Pick whichever of those angles you like. What do you make to it all, Connor?
I definitely accept the fact that the loyalty card scheme might be an avenue for price gouging. My worry about all of this is another political distraction, like we've seen with, and I'm sure you might agree with me on this, with the debates between public sector unions and the government, and then turn around and saying, especially in the US with Biden as well, saying all these companies are price gouging everything from energy to food, and they've got to bring down their prices. There's absolutely no room in this discussion at the moment to say, hang on a minute, why is inflation going up to at least 15% and you're just saying it's 10? What was the policies that meant it so that all these prices are going up? Could it be the fact that in the last 3 years alone, 33% of all dollars that have ever existed were created? Was it the policies that all of the governments around the world decided all at once, and all of the parties in this country, was a great idea, paying people to sit at home, and now we're facing the repercussions of that?
Kevin?
I don't know where to start with the broader economic analysis of how we managed to get through lockdown as a country by ensuring that we did things like furlough and other subsidies, but albeit our current government did waste a ton of money in the pandemic. But going back to the question about supermarkets, I mean, people don't, it doesn't sit well when you see some of the profits, although I would say Tesco's profit has gone down as a percentage, right? The Chief Exec Ken Murphy is very clear about that, but people are feeling it, 20% in 1 year, and it's tough to see. And I think, am I right, did a supermarket lock customers in the past couple of weeks?
Well, what they've done, and there's a few places doing this, I know some Sainsbury's stores have been doing it, I think some Waitrose stores have been doing it, even some Aldi stores have been doing it. They've been putting barriers up, and what you've got to do is you've got to scan your receipt to get out, and if you've not bought anything, you've got to call the security guard over to let yourself out. They're saying it's all about curbing shoplifting. Some critics are saying, hang on a second, you've got all of this apparatus now, you've got your self-checkout, you've got your cameras here, there and everywhere, you've now got these barriers up, and it's all a little bit feeling controlling to people. Would you agree with that, Connor?
Yeah, well, we don't know who they're even selling the data onto. And funnily enough, about the receipts as well, there's been programs like Google have started a new reward system where everywhere you go, if you have your maps turned on, they'll find the location, they'll estimate what shop you went to, and they'll reward your Google wallet if you scan the receipt for them, so they can sell what purchases and decisions you make probably onto advertisers. So it does very much feel like we're becoming the products that all of these businesses are selling to each other.
Well, data and big data, as it's known as well, that is one of the most valuable commodities in this world, isn't it? And I think it's one, and we'll come on to perhaps fraud a little bit later on in the programme, but actually, whilst it's a very valuable commodity, it is easily accessed and hacked. But are you comfortable with people having your data and knowing all about you? And
yeah, I mean, look, in my industry, in the daytime where I work in public relations and we do a lot of digital marketing and stuff like that, then yeah, the loyalty cards are a mechanism to get close to your customer, right? They can predict what day Michelle buys her favourite product, you know, what days do they have certain things ready for us according to our taste. We're all profiled by supermarkets and political parties, and you know, if we don't want to do it, we just don't sign up to loyalty cards, and we choose to shop in a different way. But it is unfortunately a part of life.
Oh, you do. What I did today, I saved, I'm very proud of myself today, I saved a whopping £28 today, right? It's a true story, except I was buying some face cream. And I worked at a supermarket, but it was, one of them had like at least a tenner off, one of them had 12 quid off. And all I did is I thought, I don't want you having all my data, thank you very much. So I just went and got a paper card, application form, took the card off, scanned it, got my discount, and then put it in the bin.
Did you?
I did.
Is that
I'm very
lawful?
proud of myself.
Is that lawful?
Why is it not lawful?
I don't know.
Do I look to you like a criminal?
Well, no comment on.
It's definitely lawful.
You'll be getting
and I
lots
would
of the
say,
supermarket soon, otherwise.
yeah, and I would say it's actually quite sensible, actually, because yes, I want the discounts, but I don't necessarily want you knowing every single inch and movement of what I do, where I go, what I buy, what I like, what I don't like. It's a little bit of a step too far for me, although I am a tight northerner, so I do like a discount, so it's a little bit of a middle ground, isn't it? What do you guys make to it all? I want your thoughts tonight. Instead of fining supermarkets for profiteering, force them to reduce their prices for 1 month, says Nick. So it'll be customers that benefit, not the Treasury. Daryl says the energy companies, the water companies, the supermarkets, the fuel companies, basically he says they're all profiteering from the cost of living crises. Ian says, I can understand why supermarkets are putting barriers up at unmanned checkouts, but have they looked at how this would affect evacuation of the stores in an emergency? Good point there, Ian. The receipt on the way out is a nuisance, says Sue, but she can understand it if people are stealing from the shop. You know, well, I used to be a checkout girl, actually, and some of these supermarkets make me laugh because they used to have people like me that physically used to scan their products in order to... Was you a checkout girl?
Yeah, I did. Well, I wasn't a checkout girl.
No, guy. I said guy.
Oh, there we go.
You might have identified as a girl, I don't know.
Oh, this day and age, I did Morrison's at the Christmas period. It was rather hectic.
Oh, Morrison's very posh. Have you been on checkout?
Yeah, I have.
You was at what supermarket?
Sainsbury's, Boots.
Sainsbury's, Boots, Morrison's. I was at Quick Save. I don't know if you remember Quick Save. I had the fastest checkout on the north, so I did. Anyway, these checkouts, these supermarkets now, they've binned all those staff off, replaced it with machines, and now start crying that people are pinching stuff. Make of that what you will. I won't say too much, else I'll get myself into trouble. We'll take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some more of your thoughts on the supermarket situation, but I want to get into climate change. Are we hypocrites when it comes to making changes to our own lives for the great good of the climate? See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Coming up tonight from 7, a world exclusive. Join Nigel live from Trump's golf course in Scotland.
It's great.
It's
Nice to see
fantastic.
you.
Everything about it's beautiful.
It's great to have you here.
The last time you were on GB News was the day that the Queen died.
That's right.
And you came
That's
on.
right.
You came on and paid a tribute to her.
What a great woman.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Farage, the Trump interview, tonight at 7. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, a man that's upset a lot of you. We're talking about Millwall, Kevin Craig, a former Labour councillor and the CEO of communications company PLMR, and Connor Tomlinson, alongside him, the writer and podcaster. Edward's been in touch on Twitter, sending me a lovely picture of your living room. I am a nosy Parker. When you send me the screens, I like to look at what's going on around it. He's loving the view. He likes the show, but he thinks it's a touch special with this as the backdrop. I have to say, I agree with you. What football team do you support, by the way?
Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
What do you make of that, everyone? Chelsea. Keep your thoughts coming in. A lot of you saying that I've moved on because it's Hull City all the way. That's all I can say. Leighton has been in touch saying that Quick Save is indeed one of the best supermarkets. I don't think it exists anymore, Quick Save.
No,
I think life's moved on from Quick Save. Anyway, let's talk climate change, shall we? Are we a little bit hypocritical when it comes to climate change? According to a new poll, yes, we are. It was conducted by YouGov. It's throughout Europe, apparently, and it's found that most people are in favour of action to combat climate change, but not if it means changing their own lifestyles. I do have to smile because, as I've said earlier on this show, you can see the background. You'll have whoever it is, very important people, passing by with their kind of motorcyclist entourage, surrounded by 4x4s. And I think, I bet you are the same people that are telling me that I've got to stop eating meat and all the rest of it in order to save the planet. Anyway, I digress. What do you think, Kevin?
I think it's a good story, and whilst I am fully signed up to the belief that our planet is in real peril, I also think it's a good poll to make us think, well, are we hypocritical, and how far would we go, to change our lives, to try and make a difference? But yeah, good poll, thought-provoking.
But are you prepared to make changes to your life, for example?
Well, this is why I thought it was a good poll, because it makes me ask questions about, I like to travel a lot for business and leisure, and flying isn't that great, is it, really?
No, but then would you sit there and actually say to myself, right, I'm going to use, I don't know, whatever technology to conduct my meetings remotely in order to reduce my flights? Would you change your life to help the planet? If you think, because you started the sentence by saying the climate is in peril, so
Yeah.
would you change?
I would change some things, but
Like what?
Well, I would fly, less for work, But what I recognise that I could be a hypocrite about this because I love to see the world. Humans have only been able to fly for 100 odd years, and I'm being quite open that the poll makes me ask questions of myself that I've got the potential to be hypocritical on this.
Connor?
I wouldn't call you a hypocrite if, and this is stipulating because I don't know your policy, mate, if you weren't saying that we should be doing massive tax rises to subsidise the green industry, because if you were saying, OK, private enterprise should take care of climate issues, they'd be totally fine to fly, because most of the things that are invested in these kind of things are businesses like the airlines that go, OK, well, if we can get better fuel and get better return on our fuel, then of course it's profitable to take action, this sort of stuff. My issue is with people at the top. As you said, people that are going along in their motorcades, like President Biden when he showed up at COP26 with a 40-car motorcade at the wrong airport, because of course Joe Biden can't really get anything right. And then Bill Gates, best example, buys beachfront property, imports sand from the Caribbean via shipping container to his private beach every year, yet turns around and says we should be spending much more money on synthetic meats and stopping flying and things like this. I don't take instructions from these people that say the world's about to burn if they're not acting like it, but they say we should foot the bill for it.
Yeah, and some of these policies, they get to me because you're talking about skirt creep and stuff on the topic before. I always remember the carrier bag, the tax that's not a tax, it's supposed to be a levy, whatever it was. It was all set up because it was about, right, let's save these single-use plastics, let's all save the planet.
It's great, isn't it?
It was great, yeah. But talk about skirt creep and mission creep now, because the amount of shops that now charge for paper bags. I can think of one very particular well-known chemist type brand on the high street, beginning with a B. You'll all know which one it is. I was there the other day buying this paper bag, recycled paper. I think it was about 10p or 15p. And I think you are just profiteering. You are taking what was supposed to be a climate initiative, and now you are using it as a way to help your bottom line, and I don't respect that.
Well, if anyone's profiteering, I think that's bad. For the purpose of balance, I have to come back and say, if we're talking about climate change, Joe Biden, unlike the previous occupant of the White House, is a human being who acknowledges the dangers of climate change and global warming. And Bill Gates is, you can laugh, Connor, but anyway,
you do realise
hang
Trump's
on, let me
policy,
finish. And the second thing is, because I didn't interrupt you, is that Bill Gates is a billionaire with a huge social conscience who wants to leave the world better than he left it.
Okay. First of all, Trump's policies, despite whether or not you think he acknowledged climate change as an existential risk, which, again, the IPCC's report, its scenario that says the world's going to burn in 12 years, as AOC once characterised, is the most unlikely. And also, they ostracised scientists like Richard Toll, and they said that, OK, just because you aren't doing the most dramatic of scenarios, you can't sit on the panel and you can't decide to do this sort of data. So, unlikely anyway. But Trump's policies, whether or not he recognised your characterisation of it, because he made America energy independent, he led the world from 2017 to 2019 in reducing emissions as a country. So what I care more about is not virtue signalling, it's practical policy. And Joe Biden decided to reverse all of Trump's fracking policies, and not only has he put America in a much more precarious position now during the Ukraine war and driving inflation, but as soon as it comes to doing these renewables, he's going to have to go and buy from China, great geopolitical enemy, who makes 80% of battery manufacturing and has captured all of the rare earth minerals in the 140 countries they have on the Belt and Road. So you can say Biden does all these things and he's a human being all you like, but he's made America and all of the countries reliant on it way worse.
What are you saying is not true?
Well, I'm just saying that Donald Trump doesn't even accept global warming and the risk of the Earth heating up as a risk.
OK, but his policy worked. Joe Biden's didn't.
Yeah, but hang on. The man doesn't think that the planet's getting warmer. He doesn't see the benefits of net zero. He thinks it's all fine. He couldn't give a monkeys. He's one of the worst elected politicians in history.
OK, but the policy worked.
Well, did it? But that's open to debate without getting into the detail of energy. Joe Biden has just announced a massive programme to create American jobs through green technologies. He's doing both things.
Do you want to know how much it would cost to just make the UK, much smaller than the US, 100% renewable by the 2030 deadline that Keir Starmer has proposed? Do you want to know how much it would cost?
I don't need to...
$3 trillion, and the tech isn't there. It would only meet 26% of energy demands without any proof for blackout.
That's not true. Do you think the planet there is an issue with climate change, Connor, though?
I can accept the climate is changing. I don't think it's going to be an existential fireball on the timeline that has been said by activists who aren't scientists.
Right, but do you think there's a danger from flooding and the ice caps melting?
I think we can make technological breakthroughs which will mitigate against that. I don't think we need to impoverish the whole world by getting off of the fuel source which has made us most prosperous compared to all of history.
Well, different opinions there. Which one do you agree with, if any? And talking about Trump, by the way, as we coverage as we're doing. Don't forget, an exclusive to GBNews, Nigel Farage will be talking to him live at 7 o'clock. That interview, you can watch it there. See what he says about it all. Quick break from me. When I come back, your thoughts, and I also want to know if you've been scammed. How do we clamp down on digital scams?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope?
It's very much so.
And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up tonight from 7, a world exclusive. Join Nigel live from Trump's golf course in Scotland.
It's great.
It's
Nice to see
fantastic.
you.
Everything about it's beautiful.
It's great to have you here.
The last time you were on GB News was the day that the Queen died.
That's right.
And you came
That's
on.
right.
You came on and paid a tribute to her.
What a great woman.
You ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
Farage, the Trump interview, tonight at 7. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and the CEO of communications company PLMR, and Connor Tomlinson, the writer and podcaster. We've just been discussing climate change. David says, I've been saying for years everyone is in favour of tackling climate change until it disproportionately affects them. Once we have to make necessary sacrifices, we all become apparently less enthusiastic. I agree with you, and the poll does too. We've just been talking about carrier bags, by the way. I was just whinging about so many organisations charging for paper bags. Listen to this. 154 retailers reported data about carrier bags, you know, these levies, 154 of them. This is 2021 to 2022. Do you know how many of them actually gave information about what they're doing in terms of donations to good causes? Just 64 of them. Which makes me wonder then, what on earth are the rest of you doing with the money? And why are you charging us for paper bags? Pack it in. Right, let's talk scams, shall we? A few people saying one of the biggest scams was net zero, but I'll leave that to the last discussion. Have you been scammed? You know what I'm talking about by now, don't you? They're quite sophisticated, these things, pretending I don't know. It's your mum, or you're trying to get hold of your mum, you're asking for money or whatever. Anyway, there's this new scheme launched today, which apparently is going to try and clamp down on fraud, digital fraud. Do you ever think we'll be able to get on top of it, Connor?
No, and anytime the government dedicates a large amount of money to tackling fraud, particularly after something you alluded to earlier, the amount of money they lost to fraud on the COVID furlough, I am sceptical as to whether or not it will go to good use. My thing that I've noticed, though, is the massive uptick in the amount of scams that they're running, because you get them through email, you get them through mobile phones. They've started going through saying that, oh, your package is at the post office, you've got to give us your details and things like that. And I'm not going to knock Elon Musk's noble efforts to reform Twitter here, but I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, if they have their DMs open, but suddenly you just get this broken English of someone trying to offer you Bitcoin or saying, would you like a conversation, I have all this money waiting for you, and that. I think the amount of schemes that are coming from abroad and that, it's very hard to crack down on.
But I think, and I don't mean to be rude, I get people falling for the text message that says, Mum, can you help me? I kind of get that because your parental instinct kicks in. But I think if you're one of those people who gets a message going, I'm like a Nigerian prince or whatever it used to be, I think they used to be called 419 scams or something like that. Like, I'm this Nigerian prince and you're in line to all these million. I think you're a bit daft if you click on one of them, but people do.
Yeah, I find those ones very surprising that folks go for that. I mean, the ones that really worry me and where I do support government efforts to tackle it is the business fraud. You know, my company, we had somebody hack into a system, pretend to be one of our clients, get our finance team to change the invoice details and get 70 grand paid to them.
Really?
Which, yeah, it happened within the last 12 months. We were very lucky that the insurance covered it, but the reality is the follow-up by the police is almost non-existent. There are banks and there are offices rather in central London where these funds are channeled through and nothing gets done about it.
Yeah, and you always have this real strange situation where a bank or whatever will ring you and they'll say, oh, is that Miss Dewberry? Before I go any further, can you clear security, can you give me your date of birth? And I'll say, well, no, I can't actually. You've just called me. So no, I can't give you my details, thank you very much.
I was going to say, you're not wrong about the people that fall for the poorly worded ones being a bit daft, because I have read before some professionals in the sphere do say they design them to be basically as not foolproof, the inverse as possible, so that the most likely and most gullible people will click them, so they'll get the most money out of them, because the majority of people will just go, no thank you.
Well, what do you make to it? I mean, it does seem to be a little bit of a strange scenario when you've got a government that I think, was it £21 billion or something was the figure that they say have been lost to fraud and public sector fraud. They can't reclaim that, but apparently they're going to fix this. One of my viewers has just got in touch saying that the shops, Graham says, should be paying you for advertising their brands with their carrier bags because they've got their logos on. You just made me smile, Graham, because I remember being a kid with a Netto carrier bag. It was bright yellow with black dogs on it, and you used to turn it inside out. No, but you used to turn it inside out because everyone would think that you was really poor and take the mickey out of you and get bullied at school. So yeah, inside out, but you could always tell what they were. Anyway, look at it. It flies, doesn't it, Sam, when you're having fun. Kevin, thank you for your company. Connor, thank you for yours as well. Thank you guys as well. I'll be back outside the Palace at same time, 6 o'clock. Don't go anywhere. Nigel Farage, exclusive interview with Donald Trump up next. See you tomorrow.
Hello there, welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. I'm Greg Dewhurst. Dry for many over the next 24 hours, though we will see some rain turning up in the southwest, and it will turn increasingly windy too. We can see that the isobars getting closer together as these weather systems start to move in from the Atlantic, bringing the risk of rain initially to southwestern parts of the UK, but this pushing northwards as we head through into the long weekend. Fairly quiet end to the day out there this evening, some misty low cloud in places, still some rain across northern Scotland. This continues during the early hours, but for most it will be a quiet night, some clear spells, some mist and fog patches. Not quite as chilly as recent nights, but in the countryside we could see temperatures down to around 3 or 4 Celsius. But it means a fairly bright start to Thursday morning, some sunny spells, low clouds should lift and break, but we will see some heavy rain moving into the southwest of England. This particularly affecting parts of Devon and Cornwall through the day, but into the afternoon pushes into parts of Wales and then later on into the Midlands. Elsewhere, plenty of sunny spells, a keen easterly wind though holding back temperatures along the east coast, 11 or 12 Celsius, but approaching 20 degrees across central areas in the best of the sunshine. Into the evening time, further showery bands of rain will continue to push northwards, merging to give some longer spells of rain, which will be heavy at times. Dry across parts of Scotland, some low clouds still affecting the east here. And then behind the band of rain, we will see further showers moving in from the south. So it means temperatures not falling as low. We will continue to see single figures in the countryside, but towns and cities holding up in double figures. But it means a much cloudier start to Friday, showery outbreaks of rain for everyone. And then into the afternoon where we get some sunny spells, some really heavy showers developing, some thunder, some hail in there too. But in between, where we get the sunshine, again, temperatures lifting towards the mid-teens. It stays unsettled into the weekend. We'll see some showers or longer spells of rain in places, but staying on the warm side. See you again soon.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.